Hi everyone, my name is Yaro and you're listening to the DIY Small Business Podcast. I am a web designer, business mentor, and tech fairy, and I'm excited to bring you another episode with an interesting conversation about building a small business. This time I spoke to Carolyn Wood about being an introvert and really managing that introvert energy to bring our message out there in sustainable ways. We also talked about creating beautiful marketing plans that feel good and thinking about pricing as well as overcoming self-doubt in our businesses and knowing our own needs and having good boundaries, which I think are such important and yet very complex themes to look at. So yeah, I'm excited to share this with you. Let me know what you think. Let us know if you have any questions about our work. Just a few announcements from me. Enrollment for the DIY business community is now closed until next year. I am kind of really spending some time with the community. It's so beautiful to get to know everyone. We're having lots of group coaching calls and live classes that I'm running towards the end of the year. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of have a little bit of time to think about how we're going to open up next year. If you're interested in that, do get on the wait list. You can find it at yarodigital.com, and I also add that to the show notes. You can still work with me this year. I have a little bit of availability for mentoring, tech support, or web design, so feel free to get in touch if you're interested in that. And otherwise, I am also booking for spring next year. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you so much for listening. Hey everyone, welcome. I'm speaking to Carolyn Wood today, which is really cool because Carolyn is also specializing in working with introverts and thinking about ways in which we can build businesses quietly. And I'm saying also that makes me feel like I've never really named that that's something I care about too. But obviously it is. I'm such an introvert myself, and I know how difficult it can be to figure out ways to share about the work that we're doing and develop marketing plans that feel good and authentic and transparent while not drowning in the sense that only the loud people who shout their stuff from the rooftops can ever make it. So, Carolyn, thank you so much for making time and for meeting me today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be here, and it's always lovely to talk to another introvert, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally.
We
Yeah.
don't get out there enough.
No, it's true. So tell us what you're doing. Like, how would you describe your work at the moment?
So what it's all about is I really want to help introverts create introvert-friendly businesses. And I think I've been thinking about this for quite a long time now, but I think it's really started to clarify in my mind that it's all about managing that introvert energy. So making sure that we're spending that social energy on things that we really love and enjoy, rather than perhaps trying to fit in with that loud extrovert messaging that's out there all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of what it's about in terms of that. It's about helping people put in place a business model and the systems that make the business work for them as an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side that I'm really still getting my head around what I want it to look like is I really want to be able to also amplify other introverts' voices. So that's something I feel quite passionate about at the moment, but I haven't quite worked out what that's going to look like in my business. But I really want to help. For me, I think we see so many extroverts out there, and I've heard people say they don't think they can run a business because they're an introvert. Mm-hmm. And I'd really love to be able to do some case studies and really showcase other introverts so that people realize that, you can be an introvert and still be really successful in business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true and really important to remember. And I agree with everything you said. And I want to add to that I think sometimes there's also kind of some shame or lack of complexity in the way we think about ourselves as introverts or extroverts. So I think, for example, I know many people who are just perceived differently than they identify actually inside. And that can have so many different reasons. Like I have in my 20s often facilitated or taught groups, for example. And then when I told someone, actually, this is really like a lot of work for me. It takes me a long time to recover from that. They'd be really surprised. And then I think there's definitely also extroverts who maybe feel like a little bit of shame for finding it easy to express themselves. And that's a shame too. So I just feel like it's really difficult to find your own voice in this space. And it's definitely true that it is easier if you find identifying your strengths and talking about them really openly easier, to build a business and to build an audience to sell something at the end of the day to people. And so I also see more excitement though around the kinds of work that you do and that I do, and more people being like, yeah, actually I wanna work with other people that are willing to be in a quiet space together that feels good to both of us. And that's really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really lovely. I've seen more and more people like yourself, and quite a few other people now who are talking about quiet business and being thoughtful and reflective. And it's really lovely to see people getting out and saying that message in a way that, I think works for them. It doesn't feel like it still seems authentic when you see it on social media. I think people think, or, podcasts or wherever you want to be, that you can have a message and get it out there without having to be really extroverted all the time and getting your message out there.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I said to you, I really enjoyed the podcast episode you did where you were talking about quitting social media. And I thought that was a really fascinating message to get out there, that social media isn't the only way to market.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, when I recorded that, it felt a little bit more like a ramble to me, and I was a bit like, oh, I'm going to do this again. I think I'll just record like a follow-up a few months into having left social media. But yeah, I think that social media for me has made me internalize a lot of these ideas that then have become complicated. And I still think, like I said in that episode, that there's a positive way to engage with social media. I got a lot out of it. I can see why other people are getting a lot out of it. But I'm also really excited about this experiment now of really leaving completely and seeing what that does to my business and to my message and to all of that. Yeah. I love what you said about bringing your message forth. And I think for many of us, the struggle is to know what that message even actually is, right? That's really hard because there are so many voices, and sometimes it's difficult to know what's actually ours and to come back to our own values. So I'm wondering, in your own work and in the work that you do with other people, what feels helpful in supporting people and finding their message?
I think for me, I think I've always known I've always had this little message in the back of my head that I've known what it was, and it's more having the confidence to share it rather than knowing what that message, having to find that message from scratch. But I think what's really helped me get my message much clearer is just talking to other people about it. I find that even as an introvert, I find that having people questioning me about it and saying, what do you mean by that? And just talking to people, about what I'm doing really helps to clarify even more what that message is. I think it's really, as an introvert, I think in particular, it's really easy to get stuck in your own brain and overthinking things. So I find by talking to other people and doing something non-introverty, I actually get more clarity. It's really interesting how that works.
Yeah, totally. Yes, that makes total sense. I think it's interesting to realize where there's clarity and where isn't, or like where people come with follow-up questions because it hasn't really been clear yet. Or also to see sometimes when I express something to someone and it's mirrored back to me and I'm like, oh no, actually that's not how I meant it. And then I know, like, okay, maybe there's like wording that could be different that would help really bring across what I mean to say. So yeah, I get that. That's great. Yeah. Another really important piece of your work is systems. And I think that's really so important. Like when I love systems. And I think that so many of us stumble across sharing and marketing and finding our message because we don't have good systems in place. And it can be such an energy drain to live and work in this space where you're always feeling like there's something not quite right. There's a few broken links, or I don't actually know what happens when someone paid an invoice. What's the next step? Maybe my newsletter integration opt-in doesn't work properly, and like, oh, how do I take payments? All those different things. They can just weigh so heavily on someone who's actually trying to create a business or do creative work. So yeah, I'm wondering, what is your approach to systems, and like how do you relate to them? What makes you feel excited about a good system?
I think for me, a good system is all about, that's what I mean about managing energy. It's like even email, I think as an introvert can be socially draining. Like if you're having to think about what to say to someone, like I think getting words right is really stressful for introverts. So for me, it's just even simple things like having a system in place so that, you book in for a call and we have a chat, and then I have a system set up so it sends out the contract and it sends out the invoice and everyone knows what's going to happen. And even having a system for booking that call, because I live in Australia, the time zones are a nightmare with everyone. Even this week we switched over to summertime, whereas everyone else hasn't, so that's just thrown everything out. So just having something like Acuity or Calendly in there that says, this is the times I'm available. I don't need to talk to you about when I'm available because this magic little system will do it for me, and I can save my email, energy for a much more important email about how a client's going with something, or, if I want to collaborate with someone, how we're going to work together, that kind of thing. It's really about managing that energy. So I use it on things that actually make money in my business or bring me much more joy than, what time am I available for a call?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that makes so much sense. And I think the scheduling is like really a beautiful, perfect example that I always bring up. Like that can just saves you so much time, even if you do find emails and those kinds of conversations easy. It's just respectful of everyone's time to be like, hey, this is my calendar. It automatically
Yeah.
updates. And I think there's also an element of like having good boundaries. So I'm approaching my 5th year in business now, and it's still something I'm thinking about sometimes, and something that hasn't always been straightforward or black and white. Stuff like someone booking a free call and then canceling an hour beforehand or not showing up at all. And like, how do we
Yeah.
handle that? And I think, I think in the beginning, and in the first few years of my business, I just really didn't have the confidence to say, like, actually, that's not okay. And I need to be more careful with how I'm managing my energy here, because, like you, I live in Scotland. So when I'm working with people in the US or in Canada or Northern America, it's usually the evening for me that is the overlap between us. But that's tricky. So like I do try to offer some evening slots, but I also really want to spend some evenings with loved ones and go out for dinner or like go to the beach for a walk and stuff. And um, so if I then kind of block an evening out for calls and people don't show up, that's there's some resentment, because if it happened during the day, then I would be just like, okay, cool, I'm just going to do something else. But actually, I could have made social plans there. Anyway, that was a long ramble. And so, but in the beginning of my business, I just didn't feel that I could afford to have those boundaries almost. Like I was just too worried of upsetting people or turning potential business and money away to say, like, actually, you can reschedule once, but please email me. And if it's a no-show, like, that's kind of not okay. And I think that a good system and the right software supporting us really facilitates that in a really effortless way, because I need to fine tune this actually. But so for now, for example, if people cannot automatically reschedule a call after 24 hours before the event, they then have to email me and say why they need to do that. And that kind of feels good to me. And it's also not something that I need to kind of manually enforce all the time in air quotes. It's just something that I have in place. And that's great.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've been the same. I now, I don't do any calls on a Tuesday and pretty much not on a Friday either.
Yeah.
And when I first started out, it was like I would take a call any day that anyone wanted to talk to me. And now I've worked out, actually, I need 2 days when I don't talk to people during the week, and I do the work on my business and client work that doesn't require talking to people.
Yeah.
And the calendar just makes that so easy. It's just like, well, I'm just not available. You don't know why I'm not available. I'm just not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't have to explain yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there's actually also just a lot of power. Like I don't want there to be a story of shame, of feeling like, oh, I need to take these 2 days off because I just don't have that much social capacity. Actually, this means that we're working really focused in a container and space that works for us, and it means we're delivering better work for our clients, which is great. So yeah.
Yeah. They're wonderful like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So thinking about boundaries and pricing, like what has that been like for you to come to a place where you're respecting your time and your energy and you have good systems in place and boundaries and you know your needs and you also know what you need to charge, which is not easy to know. Like what has that been like?
So pricing is one of the services that I do, helping people set their prices. I think for me it's been really easy because I'm a trained accountant, so numbers are really easy for me. And I think one of the things I found really interesting is I can sit down and say, right, I need to charge this much if I want to earn this, and this is what my rough hourly rate needs to be that I need to factor into packages. And so it's been really interesting that that's something that comes really naturally to me to make sure I'm charging enough that I see with my clients that isn't a natural talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've still discounted too much when I first started out in terms of trying to get clients. But I think because I now say to myself, well, this is how much you want to earn, Caroline, so you have to charge this. I don't discount anymore because I feel like, well, I wouldn't take a pay cut if I was working a job for an employer. So why would I do it just because it's a person on the end of the phone actually doesn't mean that my skills are worth any less. So that's been an interesting mindset thing. I think actually knowing what my prices should be has been easy. The not discounting is what's taken a bit of time to shift me into that right spot for my income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really relatable to me. I think in one way, running a small business, there's something really beautiful in kind of rehumanizing the relationship within trading and having a business, because we are kind of meeting each other face to face, which, it's also something difficult, but there's something cool about not always just trading with big corporations and being very disempowered in that relationship. But on the other hand, it also means that there can be a lot of complexity and awkwardness around holding what we feel we need to charge and coming to a place of understanding what that really means in terms of hourly rates and packages and all that kind of stuff. And I love what you said about this ability to kind of figure out what a price needs to be. And I just want to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, because I really do think that it's something not enough people feel they can comfortably talk about. So, and that's not to say that people can't do math. And if they don't, then that's also fine. They can still do amazing work. But I think it's more about like an emotional barrier almost to be like, numbers. It's so difficult, But actually, I think what it just is like sitting down and asking yourself, what do I need in order to feel safe? What do I need to feel abundant? What do I feel to not need to feel not resentful of the work that I'm doing with people?
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
how is that breaking down into numbers per month? And then how much work can I actually do per month? Also factoring in things like ability and time and other commitments, and just making space for the fact that we're not all the same and we can't all pull off a hard 40-hour work week, but just like being with the truth of what we can offer and seeing how that plays into numbers and how that breaks down, and also looking at costs. I mean, that's really boring for a lot of us, but I love doing a good system software and seeing like what monthly costs are really actually needed. Yeah. What do you find in that work when you're doing that with clients? Like, where do you see the biggest stumbling blocks?
I think it's even just the basic stuff that they just haven't thought about, how that individual price that they're charging for, say, a coaching package or a coaching session, how that actually multiplies out to this is how much you'll be able to pay yourself after taking away the expenses. I think there's a lot of advice out there about, price your value, what you value, what your worth you give. And I think particularly when you're starting out, I think that's just awful advice because I mean, everyone, I think, when they start out has such, concerns about their skills and whether they can deliver. They really undervalue themselves. And I think that's where all this underpricing comes from, because people have said you've got to, price your value, what you're delivering to your clients. And I think when you're new, it's really hard to get a proper sense of what you're delivering. So for a lot of my clients, it's they've followed that advice route without actually working out how much that means they're paying themselves. And then we just do the basic maths to work out what they're paying them, what they're paying themselves. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be able to live off this number. It's not going to work for me, or I'm going to be working 80-hour weeks. And for most of my clients, that's not something they want to do. It's certainly not something I want to do. I do not, that message about, you see on the social media all the time that an entrepreneur is someone who works 80 hours so they don't have to spend 40 hours working for someone else. I'm just like, I'm not doing that. I do not want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still a business. I still have other interests.
Yeah, totally. And this idea that you will do whatever it takes, I think there is sometimes like really a sense of determination I can feel in my body. I'm like, oh yes, I will work this out, and it's exciting to be in this process and to expand into it and to really like flex my muscles and see what it can do. But that will never be at the expense of my well-being or my time or my energy. There's boundaries around that, and I never want to glorify overworking or busyness or anything like that. And I think that's important, like this question of like, how many packages at what price would I have to sell in order to make a living? Whatever making a living means to me is another really important question, right? And I think that's a really big question to ask for people also who are thinking about leaving employment and transitioning into having a business. And I'm just often surprised by how many people quit their job without being clear on what that would actually look like.
Yeah. So true. And that income thing is really interesting. I've been reading, just a few months ago now, actually, I finished reading Paul Jarvis's Company of One, which is all about not growing for growth's sake. And he gives some really good examples in there of people who've picked their income. And there's one guy at the very beginning of the book who picks his income so that once he hits that amount, he just takes the next 3 months off from his business because he's earned what he needs to for that year. And I just think it's a really wonderful attitude to have, that you don't have to be striving for something that the world tells you need to be earning. It's what is it that makes you happy and what you want to earn to make your life better. Yeah,
totally. That's so beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I think this is not just about pricing and income. It's also asking about what is enough, both in terms of income and growth and what we offer and how we, how we interact with each other. And there is this story that there's always more that we could reach for. We could always do better and train more. And it manifests in so many ways that are sometimes really sneaky. So in the beginning, for example, I often have spent way more money than I could actually afford on courses and trainings because I thought, if I only learn this one more thing from this one more person who I perceive to have made it, in air quotes, then I will feel more confident to charge more and just generally trust that my business will work out. And obviously sometimes I have learned really great things from these people, but a lot of the time it came from a place of deep insecurity and like not understanding that there's a sense of enoughness even that I could ever reach. And that feels nice now. Like I'm in my business right now, there's still areas of growth where I'm really feeling that growth edge. And I'm like, this could be a little bit better and easier for me. And actually I would like to have more people in this program because I really do believe in it. But there's no longer the sense of like, never enough. Like, this is a bottomless pit and I will never, get to a sense of satisfaction. And the cool thing is also there isn't that much that I want anymore. I've just recently moved to a small village in Scotland, which meant that my living costs and quality of life has drastically shifted after living in a more metropolitan area that's way more expensive. And I just feel so content with that, because it means like I can take more creative risks. I can worry a lot less about what my retirement might one day look like. And all I want right now is to repay my student loan really quickly and create some kind of situation that means I will really have affordable housing for life, which probably means buying a small house and repaying it as quickly as I possibly can on a short-term mortgage. It would still take a long time, but I don't want to pay it off into retirement. And I think that's a fair enough thing to desire. And it won't mean that I have to work myself into the ground, I hope. So, yeah.
I really love what you said about how growth is less. Yeah, so you can grow so you can do less. I think that's really, there's so many ways you can grow your business. And obviously for both of us, systems are a fabulous way to grow business, but I love that it means you can grow and actually spend less time on it because you've made it into a more mature business rather than needing to constantly be finding more and more clients or products to sell or.
Yeah, totally.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I am wondering what your relationship to social media has been like. So we touched a little bit on this thing that we kind of somehow have to share about what we're doing, unfortunately, otherwise no one will know. And also about stories and messages that we sometimes take in. What has that been like for you, and how has it shifted over time?
I think for me, I'm finding that I'm having much better conversations on Instagram. So that's where I'm focusing now. And I think what I've found in the past probably 6 months is I'm actually enjoying it more because I'm seeing it more as a way of meeting other business people rather than as a way of making sales. It doesn't mean I don't ask for a sale on social media. I do. But I feel like what I've really got out of it is making better connections with other people. And so, I'm sort of looking at, I really want to use social media, I think, more for that connection element and looking more at blog writing, SEO, Pinterest as to how I actually make sales through that sort of raising awareness of my message rather than perhaps doing it through social media. It's been an interesting sort of little progression I've made probably even in the last year. So just being more vulnerable on social media, which as an introvert and, someone who's quite shy, I find really challenging to do. But it's actually really nice to start those deeper conversations that aren't necessarily about, well, and by the way, buy my thing. It's actually about getting to know someone and having proper conversations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Have you found that podcast?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did actually. I really love podcasting so much. I feel like it's a space for deeper conversations and almost like an extension of the conversations I used to have on social media. So feeling like I have met so many amazing people on Instagram, and often that's been the first step of getting to know someone better and maybe interviewing them or being interviewed on their podcast or just reading some blog posts. And I think in a way that really feels like something that wasn't available to me right from the start, because in the beginning everything had this very anxious energy of oh my god, I just need to find the first clients, and that I think that added some awkwardness to making relations on social media. And then towards the end, and I've left a month and a half now, I think, but towards the end I was better able to do what you describe, of just being hey, I think I have something to say and I want to share that with people, and I'm going to see how it lands, and I want to be in some kind of dialogue. And yes, I also have something to sell, and that's important to mention, but I have the space both in my head and in my calendar now to also just show up to see what happens. And And I think that's really cool. And I'm hoping to, experience more of that with podcasting. But like you said, it's often not something that we start out with, because there is a lot of pressure to be vulnerable, to show up very frequently, to maintain a level of presence in order to kind of not lose on the algorithm, for example. That's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I do hashtags on Instagram, and I probably need to get better at doing them. But I really don't want to waste too much energy trying to beat the algorithm, because I think the way you beat the algorithm is by putting out good content and being open to good conversations. It's not actually about what the latest trend is in images or so that's sort of how I just don't have the space in terms of internally to actually worry about what the algorithm is doing today, and whether I've had enough hits on my Instagram post or not. It's just not what I want it to be about.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I almost want to kind of begin to trust that doing good work, and like you said, being kind and being open to good conversations is gonna be enough to invite people into spreading the word of mouth as well. I just love nothing more than being recommended. It's such an honor if someone says, I know your work and I trust you enough to tell my friend that they might benefit from working with you. If you really think about that, that's huge, for someone to make a recommendation. And in my experience, that is very often that always, it very often results in a yes, because I think trust is really, really important. And we build trust by knowing our own boundaries and creating spaces in which we can do good work. And that, like you said, that might mean having 2 days a week of not taking any calls and knowing ourselves in that way. And I think, I think that's powerful. So, what do you do when you feel like you're taking things in too much from other people? Of like, can you relate to the sense of introvert overwhelm on social media as well?
Oh, definitely. And I've certainly unfollowed people on Facebook, or particularly on Instagram. I've unfollowed people where I felt probably comparisonitis, where I can see and it looks like they're doing amazing stuff, and I start to look at it and think, oh my goodness, they're so much better than me. And I've got to the point now where if I start to feel like that, I just I unfriend them, or I hide them at least for a certain period of time. And it's not about that I don't like that person or I think they're a bad person or anything like that. It's just their messaging is just affecting me too much internally.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip for anyone who feels similar, is that you can also just hide someone, or I think it's called muting someone on Instagram, and they don't even have to know, and it's totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to, let me start the sentence again. Is there anything else that you would like other introverted business owners to know?
I think for me, it's doing what feels manageable and sustainable to you. So I was talking to someone the other day who's an introvert, and she'd just done a 30-day Facebook Live challenge where she was on Facebook Live every single day, and she just felt exhausted at the end of it. Which, I mean, I can't even imagine doing it. But, it was a challenge. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I just think, if you know that Facebook Live makes you exhausted, don't make that a consistent part of your business. Pick the things that make you feel happy and give you joy, and that make you feel like you're making great connections and are making you money. You don't need to be doing these crazy things that are just not going to, in the long term. I'm really, from being in business, I can really see how important consistency is in terms of generating sales and building relationships. So if you can't be consistent, if you know that Facebook Live is not going to be a consistent thing for you, just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Pick something that you know you're going to be able to keep doing in your business and managing your energy, rather than getting to the end of 30 days and feeling like you now need to lie down for a week just to get over that challenge that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good
big
tip.
thing for me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, before we go, I wonder what you're currently offering and where people can find you.
Yeah, so I'm helping people to make their businesses more introvert friendly through business models, but also through systems. And the two main things that I help people with are the pricing that we've already talked about. But the other service that I offer that really relates into what you said about recommendations is helping people put in place a system to get those word of mouth recommendations. I think we get really anxious about asking for them. So about putting in place a system so that you are actually saying to people, hey, I've got a space in my calendar. If you know someone who'd be a really good fit, I would love for you to recommend them. So putting in place systems around that, they're sort of the two big offerings I have at the moment. I think word of mouth is just the best marketing tool out there for introverts. It's just, you get on a call, you know the person is probably going to be a good fit because they've been recommended by someone that you like. It's a win for everyone all around. And as you say, there's trust both ways, I think, then. So, yeah. And in terms of finding me, my website is carolinemwood.com because there's too many Caroline Woods in the world. So getting a domain name like that is horrendous. And the same with social media. So social media, I'm mainly on Instagram, and that's with the username Quietly Caroline.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. So we'll link all of that in the show notes as well. If anyone didn't catch it, then that story will be there. Caroline, thank you so much for everything that you shared. It was really beautiful and relaxing to talk to you as another introvert. Thank you.
It was lovely to talk to you too. I always love hearing about other introvert experiences.
Me too.